Shame. Shame. Financial lies that are going viral. Shame.
Brian, I am so excited about this one because, I don't know if you know this, there is a lot of information out there on the internet, and surprisingly, not all of it is good. Not all of it is accurate. Not all of it is information that you should take away and apply to your financial life. So right now, today, we want to set the record straight. We want to let you guys know about some financial lies that we've seen out there going viral that you should not buy into.
And by the way, to protect yourself, make sure you subscribe today. Turn on the notifications because we're going to load you up.
All right, Brian, this first one is one that's near and dear to us about something that we love, but turns out the internet does not love it. Check out this video.
401k is the biggest scam in America.
401ks are a scam.
401ks are the worst investment on the
Shame.
planet.
Screw the 401k.
The most idiots out there, they go, oh, I have a 401k. Well, you've been sold a bill of goods, sweetheart.
401ks are just there to keep people at work, not trying to create financial freedom.
It would make so much more sense. Put it in a life insurance product.
There it
Invest
is.
in real estate.
You put into what's called real estate.
And put it in a piece of real estate earning 25%, which is pretty easy to do.
The elites aren't using 401ks. They're using things like leveraged life insurance. You've heard of MPI or maybe infinity banking.
If you're ready for this strategy, text ready.
Oh my gosh. Do you
401ks.
see? Now y'all understand why I had to do the intro the way I did, because these people are crazy.
So it is so frustrating. So there is this myth out there that exists that all these people are trying to perpetrate, that 401ks are a scam. And it's just not true. But let's talk about some of the individual reasons why it's not true. Because if you actually watch these videos in their entirety, it walks you through the reasons why you should avoid this amazing financial wealth building tool. And here's the first one. This is what they say about 401ks, Brian. A lot of these influencers say, hey, there are high fees and they take up half your money. True or false?
Well, it's definitely, in this moment in time, false. And now look, if we went back 15, 20 years, sure, 401ks were much more expensive, but right now, especially the bigger providers have lowered their minimums. The competition out there in the marketplace has caused administration costs to come way down. And then even the government has made some adjustments that have allowed less testing or workarounds so that it's gotten cheaper. Technology as well as improvements in the process have made 401ks much more affordable.
So even if you project it out, you look at average 401ks across all 401ks that exist right now, it's somewhere around 1%. Well, even if you take that 1% and you take it through time for someone who's investing in a 401k, it's not going to get anywhere near eating away half of your money. Now, there are better and worse ways to do it, but what's the alternative here? Think about this. Okay, I don't want to do a 401k because of the fees. What's the recommendation? Oh, let's go do something like whole life insurance, or let's go do something like real estate closings that have tons of fees and tons of closing costs. You have to ask, okay, where does the conflict of interest exist? And is that actual factual information, or is it just hogwash?
And by the way, it's very easy to get low-cost plans right now. If you're in a plan, if you're one of the exceptions and you look at your plan and you're like, I don't like the commissions, I don't like the internal expenses, I don't have a lot of index funds, go advocate for a lower cost plan. You know, now with fiduciary standards and other things, it's not hard to hold your employer accountable to get them to actually do better for you and your financial future.
All right, so clearly high fees are not taking away half the money. Let's look at one of the other things that these influencers say are why you should avoid 401ks. You barely beat out inflation, so why bother? All right, well, first,
shame. That's a lie.
It's
That's
not
a
even
straight
true.
up lie. Let's give them some stats, Bo.
So if you look at this, if we look at the S&P 500 compared to inflation over from 1990 to 2023, and you look at the growth of $1 growing with inflation versus $1 growing in the S&P 500, the inflated $1 amount from 1990 to 2023 turns into $2.43. $1 invested in the S&P 500 turns into $24.37. So to say that it barely beats out inflation is absolutely asinine.
This is the part that bothers me. What do you think you're buying when you buy the S&P 500? You're buying the economy, the 500 biggest companies in the United States. So when we all are complaining, hey, the cost of groceries are going up, who do you think is raising the prices because of the higher cost, and then they have to push up what they're charging customers? It's those same companies.
That's right.
You have a way to not only, and by the way, that's just inflation. Let's not forget the reason these companies actually make so much money is that as innovation, as new technology is discovered, buying the S&P 500 lets you be part of that success, lets you be part of that expansion, and not getting caught up in letting your purchasing power get eaten away by the unfortunate impact of inflation.
Okay, Brian, what about this other myth? They like to say, hey, when you put your money in a 401k, when you decide to get duped by this type of account, it's like you're putting your money in prison. You're literally putting your dollars somewhere where you cannot get to it.
Man, you do this long enough, you know that as Americans, we don't have a problem getting access to our retirement fund. So I'll show you some stats on that in just a second. But look, we need our money to understand what its purpose. I talk about army of dollar bills all the time. Some of your army is going to be for emergency reserves. Yep. Some of your army is going to be for buying your first house or being in your first after-tax investments. But some of your money and your army of dollar bills needs to be locked away for the future because we just as Americans are not good at being, disciplined with keeping that money working for the future.
It's almost like the fact that you have to put in the 401k and the goal is to leave it in there for a long time is intentional, is on purpose because people actually need that behavioral incentive because when you look at it, one of the myths that they say about 401ks is most retirees still don't have enough saved. So why even bother? Why would you take advantage of a 401k if it's not even working? Well, the problem is not the account. The problem is not the structure. The problem is the people. It is the behavior that they are missing, not the tool that they are using.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. I just made because we hear that these things are like putting your money in prison. Mm-hmm. That's a false statement because we know for every dollar that's put into a 401k, 40 cents comes out prematurely.
Yep.
That's almost half. 40% of the money is coming out prematurely on average. So we don't have an access to retirement savings problem. We don't let our money work for us. We don't save. We don't invest. We YOLO it up and focus on instant gratification versus deferred gratification, which is where the wealth building lives and exists.
That's exactly right. The problem is not the product, it's the people. Listen to these stats right now. The average 401k contribution is only 7.4%. That is a far cry from the 24% savings rate you hear us talk about all the time. If you look at average 401k balances right now, for those that are at or near retirement, age 54 to 64, the average 401k balance is only $208,000. Well, if you have a $208,000 401k balance, that can generate a lifetime income for you of only about $700 a month. So the problem is not the account. The problem is there's not enough money going into the account. And even when people are doing this, 17% of folks right now have outstanding 401k loans, and 34% of people aren't even getting their full employer match. If you listen to us for any amount of time, you know that we have the financial order of operations. Brian, do you have the thing with you that you show them?
I got the financial order of operations right here.
What we know that step 2 of the financial order of operations is that you go out there and get your employer free money. It is literally free money that you should not walk away from. And yet, there are 34% of folks not out there going and getting that. So again, we have a behavior problem. It is a people problem, not a product problem.
Well, I think it's important to understand. I asked when we were doing our content meeting, and I would encourage everybody, go out to moneyguide.com/resources. We have a wealth multiplier tool that'll let you actually figure out what $1 is worth or what you need to invest to be worth $1 million or $2 million. I want to hone in on that average 401k balance of 55 to 64 is only $207,000. That's disappointing because I look at my wealth multiplier chart, and I know when you come out of college, or even if you just get your legs underneath you at around age 22, to have $2 million, you need to invest $249 a month.
That's it.
Well, you see, most people end up with a tenth of that.
That means they were not saving $200.
They're not even saving $25 a month. As I said, I knew when I was 17 years old working at Hardee's, the drive-through, I could save $100 a month back then. So to find out that people aren't even saving $25, that's where you start thinking, I don't like the latte effect, but it's very easy to see. If we're not even prioritizing $25 a month in our 20s, how can we expect to let our army of dollar bills reach the critical mass point that they can work harder than we can with our hands, our back, and our brains?
And we know this from the data. That most folks who hit millionaire status, the very first account to cross over 7 figures is, in fact, their 401k. It is the account that makes someone a millionaire. So the idea that 401ks are a scam, absolute hogwash. I'm going to say myth busted.
Shame.
All right, let's look at this next one. Let's see what our friends out there on the interwebs have to say about this.
There's $1 million side hustle that's so easy, a 5-year-old could do it.
I made $10,000 of nothing.
I make over $200 a week from a side hustle doing absolutely nothing.
It's all $1 bills.
$100 in 15 minutes by doing one simple task.
Starting a print-on-demand brand.
I bought a vending machine.
You're going to take surveys.
Looking for this NFT.
$200 in 1 week.
$90 to $600 per hour.
Here's how much money my laundromat brought in the past 5 days.
It's never been easier to get rich.
It's never been easier to get rich. It's just so easy. It's so easy.
But I will say, there has never been a better time to build wealth. I do agree with that.
Sure.
I think the problem is everything we just saw, there's an ounce of truth to some of it, but then most of it is cutting a corner off and working against the actual behaviors and things that will create wealth in the long term.
Because here's what the actual myth is. The myth is that you can be lazy and get rich. There are ways out there where you don't have to do anything at all. You don't have to figure anything out. You can just be lazy, and it's so easy. Just follow these steps, buy this system, do this thing, and all of a sudden, money is going to start showing up. And it's this idea that we can create passive income. And what's really, really interesting is even some of the things that we saw in there were maybe qualified as passive incomes, but they are more appropriately side hustles. It is another job. It's another vocation. It's another thing that you are pursuing. So even if you're someone who's doing a side hustle and you're pursuing ways to build up passive income, there's a really good chance that you're not lazy and it's not easy just to make that happen.
Well, I think it's taking advantage of the fact that, a lot of stats show in this modern economy that we live in that 45% of Americans are doing some type of activity that creates a side income for them, whether it's delivering, whether it's driving a ride share. There's all kind of selling things on Etsy. There's all kind of ways that you can create alternative income sources, but none of them are passive or what I like to call mailbox money. And that's really what those clips that infuriate me is they're trying to make it seem like it's so easy to just take, as one of them said, 15 minutes to just turn into hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. That's just disconnected from reality.
All right, so let's talk about some of the popular passive income ideas we talk about. Let's talk about, as it relates to this myth, Brian, can you be lazy and do this? Let's think about...
Put it as what it really is. Too good to be true promises that I can work very little to build all this money and it's just going to pour in.
All right, let's look at this first. The first one, rental real estate. Now, again, if you've been listening to us for any amount of time at all, we love rental real estate. We love real estate investors. We love folks who decide for that to be part of their financial journey. But in our opinion, there is a time and a place when it makes sense. And I would argue it is not a passive activity.
Yeah, even if you get the best case scenario, you get the great tenant that is essentially going to live in this house long enough for it to pay for itself off them making the mortgage payments for you. Usually you have to put the homework in on background checks, credit checks, making sure this person is gainfully employed. You know, you're going to do some due diligence to make sure that this is a good tenant. Yep. But the reality is that we don't all get those unicorns out there. You're going to have people, you got to kiss enough frogs before you get the Prince Charming that's going to rent your property. You're going to have people that, as I've shared, who are changing engines in the living room, that are going to get ticked off and go way beyond your security deposit, or ripping off cabinet doors, poking holes. There's all kind of bad things that can happen with rental real estate that makes it not bad, just not passive. You have to be actively involved to be successful.
And the other thing that is so interesting is that all those things that you just described cost money. All those repairs, all that maintenance, all that. If you're trying to jump out at the very beginning of your financial journey and do this, it's going to be real hard to overcome all of those things.
And most of these things only work if everybody pays their rent. Think about some of these states out there right now. I even saw a post where somebody's doing Airbnb or luxury property and they get a squatter in there.
Yeah. Yep.
They're not allowed to kick these people out for like 6 to 9 months. Be careful, you know, and I know I get a lot of trolls are like, man, you're just mean. You want to kick. No, there's a reason I don't do this type of real estate. It's because I do have too big of a heart. I would not be able to kick people out, but I'm telling you, this is the problem that makes it where it's not printing money like they'd have you believe on social media.
All right, let's talk about another one that they mentioned in that video. What about these community-based products? What about figuring out how to do ebooks or social platforms or blogs or affiliate marketing? Surely that's easy, right? Like, surely I can just lay in bed, set it up in 15 minutes, and then just count the money as it comes in, right?
Yeah, and I think we know a little bit something about this. We've been creating content since 2006. There is no doubt if you build a following, you can create products, digital products that can generate income. But it's far from easy.
Yep.
And by the way, and everybody who says you just go use AI and set it up, that doesn't work. You have to build an audience. You have to find people that trust you and build. That doesn't happen. If you just try to create content without an audience, you're going to find that you're basically creating something that goes into a black hole, disappears, and you'll lose interest and probably fall off within about the first 2 to 3 months of creating content.
And what I think is wild is so many people fall into the camp of, oh, well, I'm going to do this because I've seen the brochure. Well, when you look at the brochure, all you're seeing is the highlight reel. Listen to this. Only 12% of full-time creators earn more than $50,000. I'm going to say that again. Only 12% of folks that consider community-based products or digital products their primary occupation make over $50,000, while 46% of them earn less than $1,000 a year. 46% make less than $1,000 a year trying to build these social platforms. So this is not something that is super easy that everyone is doing. And yet, right now today, 1 in 4 Americans say, oh yeah, I want to be a social media influencer. 1 in 4 kids say, what I want to do when I grow up is I want to be an influencer on social media.
This reminds me back when I used to go talk to high school classes. I'd ask all the kids, how are you going to build your wealth? And they'd be like, well, I'm going to be a professional athlete. I'm going to be a performer. And all those things, they're just the exception. They're not the rule. And that's what I always tried to explain when I was talking to these high school classes is that you realize most professional athletes don't make the money you see in NFL contracts or NBA. You're only thinking about those things. There's a lot of athletes that just don't have that. It's the same way with people doing digital products, as Bo just shared. You'd be much better served developing a skill that you can get so passionate about that you can't help but share content, but you have to have expertise. You have to be a master. You have to be doing something so good that you can't help but share the good news with it. That's how you build community. It's not because you just want to be an influencer or you want the lifestyle of a YouTuber. Just wanting it is not going to be there without the talent, the aptitude, and the passion.
Okay, there was another thing that was in that video that I think is interesting that a lot of folks talk about, oh, I just want to do that because, again, if I do that, I can be lazy and I can become rich. And this idea of I'm just going to go buy a business, or I'm going to create some sort of business, either buying a product and then reselling the product, or maybe I'm going to do Turo, or I'm going to have a vending machine, or I'm going to do a laundromat, or I'm going to do something like that, where if I just kind of get over the barrier to entry, then I'm going to lay back, be lazy, collect the money. Surely that is just as easy as it sounds.
Well, let's
right?
take each of those that you just said. I mean, if you create a business that you're like a side hustle, like I said, we know almost half of Americans do that. It's not easy. I mean, it takes work. You're probably going to spend 15 to 20 hours even creating something that is successful. Turo, I mean, drive it like a rental? I mean, do we really want to go buy a fancy car that people are going to be, driving it ragged and tearing it up and taking it apart, doing all kind of things? I'm not doing that with any of my nice stuff. And I'm always amazed. Here's another one, Bo. I saw a laundromat in there. I've seen posts about Christmas tree farms.
Yep.
I always think, man, when they give me the numbers, isn't it amazing? And maybe it's because I'm an accountant and a CPA background. They always give me the revenue. Tell me the profit. I want to know, where are we at with the hassle factor on this thing? Because you can tell me your revenue, but you might have razor thin profit margins where it's just not worth the hassle factor of dealing with it. Because, for example, laundromats.
Yep, it's a great example.
A lot of capital involved in that because you have to buy the facility or rent the facility. You have to have all the capital.
Machines.
You have to have all the repairs because if somebody's washing stuff, either they don't own their own washing machine or they've soiled something so bad they're like, not in my washing machine. You're probably opening yourself up for people to treat it like a rental versus treating it like something they own. And there's probably going to be more maintenance, more repairs, and just a lot of things that don't show up in the revenue line.
So what I'm hearing you say is even if you do pursue that, you can't be lazy and do it. It's still going to take some active work to make it work. So then the question becomes, okay, well, are there passive income strategies that you like? Is there something that you guys would say, hey, yeah, this is a great way to watch money grow while you can, quote unquote, be lazy? And our answer would be yes. That's why we love investing in things like index funds, investing in the stock market, buying the S&P 500, or even just putting money in high yield savings accounts that's interest bearing. Those are literally accounts where you can take your money, put them somewhere, and while you sleep, your dollars grow. Nothing I did yesterday made the stock market go higher or lower. Nothing that I did this year will make the stock market go higher or lower. And yet, when I put my dollars to work for me, they continue to grow through time and get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You can be a saver and investor and quote unquote be lazy and get rich doing that if you do it over a long enough time.
Yeah, and index funds, we always talk about the S&P 500, but you could also look at real estate indexes. There's, things like that syndicates. There's other things that you can do that allow you to get into some of these sexier sizzle type things, but still make it truly passive. I like the S&P 500 because it lets you just buy the innovation, all the technology, everything that's evolving in the economy. You're going to be part of that growth in the long term.
All right, so myth number 2, you can be lazy and automatically become rich. I'm going to say myth busted. That's not true.
Shame for lying like that.
All right, let's check out this next video.
If you're a guy in your 20s and you don't have a Lamborghini, you should actually sit down and have like a serious discussion with yourself as to why you don't have a Lambo.
Yep.
Because I realize now that it's so incredibly easy and there's
Just
so much
easy.
money out there, and 200 grand relative to what is out there in circulation and what you can grab, especially now with AI tools that you can leverage like never before, 200 grand is chump change.
$200,000 is chump change. So here's the myth that we want to talk about. If you're not rich yet, you're doing it wrong because it's too easy. There's too much money out there. There are AI tools, that you should be able to use. How on earth are you not rich yet? If you are not, you're doing it wrong.
I hate this type of content because it basically rips the guts out of anybody starting from zero. We're coming from two people who started at zero. I think a little context and perspective could help because this is just not tied to reality. But what are actually, because he talked about young people in their 20s, what's the actual median income for somebody in their 20s?
Yeah, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median income right now for Americans from age 20 to 24, $38,000 a year. will not buy a Lamborghini. The median income for those that are even 25 to 34, $54,000 a year. So this idea that, oh, if you're 25 and you're not making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and if your income is not just balling out, you're doing something wrong, is just flawed. That's a fallacy. That's not true.
Here's how I know these guys are effective and it's seeped into our society is because we've covered this before, but I think it's worth showing again. If you ask the average American, how many people make $500,000?
Which is a huge income. How many
That's
folks?
a strong income. The public thinks a quarter of people, 25% of people are making $500,000. Guys, that is not connected to reality. That is false. Too many people have watched these crypto bros and others out there who are saying, hey, just go get you $200,000, put it in a Lambo. False, because the reality is it's only 1 in 100.
Very different than 1 in 4.
If you think that's bad, if we just said 25% of the public thinks that, 1 out of 4 make $500,000. How about this fact? 1 out of 5 or 20% make $1 million a year. That's disconnected from reality.
The average American thinks that 1 out of every 5 people they see makes an income over $1 million a year.
This has to be social media is causing this because it's a distortion. Yep. It really is. What's the reality?
When you actually look at this, the total number of Americans that are actually making over $1 million a year of income is 1 in 1,000. 1 in 1,000 is very, very, very different than 1 in 5. And yet, social media, the finance bros, the gurus out there would say, oh, if you're not absolutely killing it, absolutely crushing it, you're doing wrong. Let's show them the numbers of what are the folks that are actually killing it, actually crushing it? Because if you want to know what you need to earn to be in the top 10% of U.S. households by age, you may be surprised. If you are 25 to 29 and you make over $143,000 of household income, you're in the top 10%. Not $500,000, not $1 million, $143,000, you're in the top 10%.
Early 30s, it's $188,000. Late 30s, it's $230,000. Bo, when you get in your 40s, what does it take?
$271,000 of household income will put you in the top 10%. And then from 45 to 49, if you want to be in the top 10% of earning households, you would need to earn over $301,000. So none of those crossed into the $500,000 of income. None of them even got close to $1 million of income. So the perception that we have of how much money everyone around us is making is totally flawed and is totally off. And I think it's a product of videos just like the one we just watched.
Comparison is the thief of joy. Look, I don't mind you seeing what the top 10%, because I want you to have goals, but you do not. And the sooner you recognize someone's always going to make more, someone's always going to have more, you're going to be more comfortable. And how about this? Let me give you the real context that I want successful people to understand. Is that the typical age of a millionaire? When do you cross into 7-figure status? 49 years of age.
Not 39, not 29, 49.
49 years of age. And typically after 28 years of saving and investing. This myth of overnight success. There's a reason that when we see this actually happen, the exception happen, it's because somebody invented something, they wrote some code, they created something.
Or they're lying.
Yeah, or you're an athlete or some other. Those are the exceptions. That's not reality. Figure out how you can actually tie into what creates success and start your journey.
All right, so myth number 3, if you're not rich yet, you're doing it wrong. False.
Shame.
Myth busted. You may just not have been doing it long enough yet. All right, let's check out this next video, Brian.
Well, those that are watching the podcast, listen to the podcast. You can't watch a podcast. I guess you could, but it'd be kind of boring. But if you're listening to a podcast, we just showed that somebody said, hey, I should be saving for the future. But then they flip to a screen and it's them like a nightlife and traveling. It's like, just kidding. I'm going to maximize today. That YOLO lifestyle. That I feel like this is all over. Once again, back to social media telling you, lifestyles of the rich and famous. You're like, what is that? I'm just telling you, that's what social media is. It is everybody's highlight reel on how awesome their life is, to the detriment of you feeling like you are just not living the dream like everybody else around you.
So here is the myth that's out there. You don't need to save in your 20s. You shouldn't have to worry about saving in your 20s because that's not the prudent decision to make. That's not the way that you ought to decide how to navigate your finances. And what's so interesting is that there are camps on both sides of this discussion saying this and reinforcing this idea, because now there's this movement of what are called safe savers. Some are saying, hey, we need to say goodbye to retirement. A soft saving, in air quotes, is a trend emerging among young people saying, hey, you know what? I don't care about balling out in my 60s and 70s. I'm going to live right now, enjoy right now. I don't need to save for the future. So those are the folks who don't want to save. But Brian, there's even another camp. The folks who have been saving and said, you know what? I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing, but man, I just don't like this. And so now there are folks who are saying, hey, I've realized I've saved too much for retirement. Or some high earners are saying, I've saved too much for retirement and now it's going to backfire, so I need to back it down. So it seems like no matter whether you have been saving or you haven't saved at all, the thought is, I don't need to save right now. Saving in my 20s is bad. I should not get started on this early.
Don't you feel like the world right now rewards the extremes?
Absolutely.
I mean, I feel like everybody, whether you're talking about politics or whatever, and I'll put this in financial terms. We've got the YOLO crowd over here where you got to maximize the instant gratification, go out there and live your best life right now. Epicureans unite. And then you've got over here, the people who are basically like, you know what, you need to save and you need to live this miser lifestyle because you're going to maximize the best version of yourself. We don't like any of that stuff. I don't like any extreme. I always like to pull the curtain back and try to tell you the reality of the walk towards financial success. And I want you to understand, I do want you to enjoy each decade of your life. I want you to have the best version of yourself in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s. But it is going to take a balance of you've got to take a small portion of today for that more beautiful tomorrow. That's what deferred gratification is. It's the superpower that creates wealth. You're going to have to do it, but you also have to balance it with bedazzling your basic life. Well, in the content meeting, because that video was shown, I think they were in Mexico.
Yep, that's right.
I was like, I'm not against that. I mean, I remember the first time I went to Cancun. I think my wife and I went on our honeymoon for less than like $1,200.
It's amazing.
I mean, the first time I went on a cruise ship, I think we spent like $500 a person. I mean, you can travel and have a great life, bedazzle your basic life without breaking the bank. It's when you start looking at Bora Bora and all these other wanderlust dreams out there, you might not be able to afford that unless you are a financial mutant who starts saving and investing and have your army of dollar bills when you're in your 40s. That's when you wanderlust on that type of stuff. Know the time and place for your journey.
All right, let's talk about, as it relates to that idea, knowing the time and place, let's talk about some of the perceptions that exist versus the reality of that situation. So what I just heard you say is there's this perception amongst folks that money's made to be spent. I should not be saving it for the future. I need to be spending it now. But the reality is a little bit different than that, right?
Yes, you need to look at money as a tool. It is a vector for you creating a plan to maximize every decade of your life, reach your financial goals. And by the way, there is a reason I've created the instruction manual for money. It's the financial order of operations. Go to moneyguy.com/resources. You can download a free copy. And by the way, if you want to really accelerate, I want you to go to moneyguy.com/millionaire mission. I got a book coming out next May. It's going to rock your world and giving you a deep dive as well as the origin story on my own journey into creating that type of success.
All right, what about this perception, Brian? There's this perception that money will come back to you, especially if you're a young person. If you're in your 20s, don't worry about it. Don't worry about saving in your 20s. You have plenty of time to save in the future. What's the reality in that scenario?
You know, I had enough of you scream at me, read Die with Zero. Go. So I'm about halfway through it. And I'm not against, because I think we do a good job of balancing out how do you maximize your life, but also save for the future. The problem I have is that there is a survivorship bias when people are successful and then they look back and go, I could have spent more money. You're not going to know which dollars were the dollars that started the journey of creating success. And I just know when I look at my millionaire wealth survey that I do every year, I never have anybody saying, I saved too much money. They always say, I wish I'd have started sooner. And the reason, moneyguy.com/resources, if you look at our wealth multiplier, we actually have a tool now that you can use. You can download the resource, but you can also use the tool. You'll see that your money in your 20s is so much more valuable than your money in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. Take advantage of how valuable compounding interest can be when you're young.
And a lot of people, it sounds like, at least the data would suggest, okay, don't save in your 20s, just wait and save later. And they're not. The people in 30s, 40s, 50s, they're not saving. That's the reason why we have such an anemic savings rate in this country. And that's why when you look at total retirement accounts, the numbers are so low. So clearly, this is not working. Okay, what about this one, Brian? There's a perception that, hey, there's no point in saving for your 60s. Right now, your 60s is so far away. Why on earth would you try to be solving problems that you don't have for 40 years? What is the actual reality as it relates to that?
Well, the reality is your life expectancy, you're going to live to be in your 70s and 80s. Now, look, as somebody who's now in my 50s, it just hurts to say that out loud.
First time he said it on air.
Yeah, I mean, it hurts to say it, but I'm living my best life because I have decisions I made in my 20s. And I think that now I think about my travel budget is probably 3 to 4 times what I made coming out of college. That doesn't happen without investing for an army of dollar bills. I don't want you living a miser lifestyle where you get to do nothing until you're in your 40s and 50s and 60s. I'm just saying take a little bit of today, just a small little bit. It's that whole saying that you had a coach tell you, if you do it right, you can do it light, meaning it only takes a small bit of today to save. Remember, I found out if I was saving $100 a month in my early 20s, I was going to make me a millionaire. It just doesn't take much. If you do it wrong, you're going to be doing it long. I can just tell you that is the reality of the situation. That's why 20-somethings have something so valuable that all the people are trying to find that fountain of youth to bring back the ability of time to let their money work for them. Don't waste that. Wasting time is more expensive than wasting money.
You don't get to choose what goes out there on the internet. But what you do get to choose is how you respond to it and how you let it impact your decisions. We've walked you through some lies that we think the internet and influencers are telling you that we don't want you to fall prey to, because we think that your financial future, no matter where you are today, can be bright, but don't fall into the trap of having someone sell you a bill of goods that you do not want, that will not get you to where you want to go. That's why we do this. That's why we do this show. That's why we have all the resources and tools available out on moneyguy.com so that we can continue to help you do money better.
We know that about 60% of you guys are brand new. So I want to go ahead and get you caught up really quick to the rest of our Money Guy family that's been hanging out with us. First stop, go to moneyguy.com. We've redesigned that website recently. We've got some brand new tools. We've got other things with animations. Not only are you getting free resources now at moneyguy.com/resources, we actually have animated tools that you can use to know how to buy a house, buy a car, how to save for the future. Go check that out. If you're one of those people that loves the free stuff, go hang out in it. But if you want to accelerate your success, I would encourage you to go to learn.moneyguy.com, and we actually have a curated, whether it's courses, whether it's tools, we can help you out with your net worth. We can help you know what your number is. We even have a brand new book that'll be coming out in the next few months called Millionaire Mission. It's going to walk you through all the financial order of operations. Go check all that out. And of course, the reason we do this, first of all, it started as a passion project. Back in 2006, I just wanted to educate people because I always wanted to be a school teacher, but I've caught on that there's this little thing I was tapping into called the abundance cycles, meaning that the more successful I made you, the more successful I was because people kept graduating and then becoming clients of my firm. I would love for you to go on that journey too. Take the relationship to the next level. When you get to a level of success, as you get to 600,000, 700,000, close to $1 million, and you're like, man, I think I'm ready to go beyond just basic index funds and other things. Let's reach out. You can go to moneyguy.com or you can go to aboundwealth.com. We have work with us sections. Go check it out. We'd love to take that relationship to the next level. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen. Look, you've got to own your financial future or it will own you. Money Guy team, out.